Hey there, welcome to History Chats. Okay, maybe it occurs to me that for the story we're telling today, we can probably do a better job with the camera angle perspective. Um, you might not know this if you didn't watch the video we did a while ago, but there's actually a door here. This is a sort of just to cover up a window that actually looks out into the exhibit space. Um, Hello. So yeah, reason that this is interesting is because we're talking about the exhibit space, or rather, what's not here. As you may notice, we're kind of missing some stuff. There's actually not too much here in the exhibit hall, the second floor here. The parks exhibit itself has been taken down now that we're in 2024, and in a few months, we will be opening up a brand new exhibit. More on that in a little bit, but I thought this was a good opportunity to talk about, hey, what happens in between the exhibits from the point where we start taking things down to when we start putting stuff up for the new exhibit, and what goes on in between. We'll come back here for a bit. So I just want to. It's also worth noting that this is our process, right? Um, Other organizations will have other ways that they do this. We're fortunate enough to be uh, have the resources to do some of the things that we can do that other organizations might not be able to do, or it is still very, you know, the turnover in terms of when we take an exhibit down and when we start the next one is actually much larger than some other organizations, right? If you look at like an art museum, the Leoki Woodson or the CVA or any other art museum, like those sort of exhibits are a lot easier to switch out. And even historically oriented organizations, museums, some people have the time and they have the sort of thing, everything nailed down in order to take it down, and then within a week they'll have the next one up. That's not how we operate. For a variety of reasons, that's just not the philosophy and sort of the logistical abilities for us to do. So we need to take stuff down and then kind of live in the space, and it takes a long time as we design the exhibit, especially in a space like this, which is awkward. Hey, we're back in the exhibit. Okay, so I don't think it necessarily you have to remember what this looked like during the park's exhibit tenure here to recognize that there's some stuff that's missing, specifically the stuff, right? The first step in taking down the exhibit is to literally take down the stuff in the exhibit, the display panels, the pictures, the text, all of the objects that we had as part of this. That all has to be taken down, sorted out, and put into the good places. We'll talk about where all that stuff goes in a second. But once we have stuff out of here, and this is kind of the stage we're in here, we then have to kind of turn the room back to restore it back to it, cover the tracks, right? We don't necessarily know what the new exhibit is going to need in terms of all of the stuff. Like, will these temporary panels, these walls, be here? Probably not. Maybe. So we'll have to make those decisions. But in the meantime, we can take these down. We can't take these down. The actual walls of the room are going to stay here. So we want to make sure that we put them back to a good, well, specifically, as we pulled out the stuff that we hung, we often try to hang with screws, because screws will really give it a nice hold. We don't have to worry about them coming down. Sometimes we have lighter things we can use, like adhesive strips, but screws are kind of the big thing here. There's a lot of holes left over, though, when you take screws out of a wall, and so you can't really see this from this distance too close up here. There's a lot of stuff that we need to keep track of, right? Fill in those holes, scan them over, and then repaint them so that you, ideally, in a few weeks, you probably won't even know that we ever put screws in that wall or any of these walls. Now, these walls on the outside will be back to the same color. We're not repainting the entire thing. Some of the walls, like the temporary wall here, will be repainted, and that's one of the things that we're getting ready for here. Probably by the time that you watch this video, we will have already gotten most of this painted a reddish color to fit the theme of the new exhibit. We'll talk about the new exhibit later. But for now, It's going to have a reddish theme. I hope I didn't give too much away. So, yeah, anyway, we're starting to get ready for painting. We've filled in the holes. Some of the other temporary walls we'll be doing, stuff that we'll know we're going to be using. And then we'll go through the process of taking everything else down and sort it out and all of that. So what is the stuff that we took down, right? It's not just getting the room back to what it would be so we could start fresh. We also, in the meantime, have to find homes for all of the stuff that we took down. Let's talk about the display panels, for example. The display panels. We print a lot of display panels recently. We have a whole stack of them right here of things that we had printed for the exhibit that we pulled off of the wall. A lot of this is going to get repurposed, repurposed in different ways. Actually, you know what? Let's go take a bit of a diversion here. This is where I go down to the Our Stories exhibit and talk about that. It's a quick diversion here to Our Stories, which is our core exhibit, is what we call it. This is on the first floor, right? This is not a space that we cycle through. This exhibit was put up a little over a decade ago, and it hopefully will be up for another 10, 20, who knows. At some point, we'll probably have to take it down and replace it, but the goal of this part of the exhibit, unlike the other spaces where we can tell more specific stories about, dairy farming or the Parks Department or, a decade of life in Marathon County, this is designed so that there's different sections for different aspects of life that people have lived here. So, you have some business, some brick stuff here, and granite. You got some fun. You get the idea. Now, this stuff is not stuff that we are taking down anytime soon, but when we do, there'll probably be a similar process to what we did with the Parks exhibit. One of the interesting things that happened over the last 10, 11 years, they're starting to do it when they put this exhibit together, is we started to get more and more of the materials that we use for exhibits printed on this sort of PVC material, as opposed to putting it on paper and then mounting that on a mat board or foam core or something like that, which works super well. The thing is, I can tell you from experience from old panels that have been salvaged from exhibits from 10, 20, 30 years ago, they don't necessarily put back up as easily, right? The material degrades. It doesn't have that same sort of fresh look. But this stuff will, right? The PVC rigid board material, it's super good for that, right? And especially if we're going to go through the effort to print these big, beautiful pictures of stuff happening at the parks or people enjoying themselves outside, there's an opportunity to reuse it at some point in the future. And so that's what we would typically do, right? So we mostly do this, again, over the last 10 years, we've been increasingly doing more of it. But here, again, 2010, 2011, we're still using combination. And I should note that we also still use this sort of material for some of the parts of the Parks exhibit, and we'll probably do it for future exhibits as well. So it's always a mix of things. But the point is that when we took down the Parks exhibit, we pulled all the screws out, we took all of the boards off the wall, then we sorted through, okay, what's going to be usable, what's going to be reused, things like the signage that just says like outdoors, or I'm trying to think what we actually had, camping. Those probably aren't going to be as relevant to hold on to because there's not as much need for that sort of very specific signage. And maybe some of the pictures won't be usable, but we have the option of holding on to them, and that's the important part. And who knows, you may end up seeing some of the stuff from the Parks exhibit in future public displays and things like that in the coming year. Among the signage and the stuff that we've created had printed for the exhibit, you might see some other stuff out there in the future being reused as well, like this, or the information kiosk back there. Some of the stuff that we do for an exhibit, we create, like the kiosk, which Russ did a great job of putting together for us. It kind of gave an opportunity to have pamphlets like you might find at a park. And of course, we didn't make this. The Parks Department kind of did. Among our list of things when we approached the Parks Department about doing, working on together for this exhibit, we had a list of things to be like, it would be awesome if you had. And some of that stuff, they were very generous in giving us. Pretty much everything on our list, if they had the opportunity to make it happen, they did. big thanks to them. One of the things that we said would be really cool is if we had a picnic table. We knew we wanted to have a picnic table sort of laid out with, the sort of stuff you'd take to a park. And so we said, hey, do you have an old picnic table? And ideally, do you have one that maybe is being put to pasture that we can cut in half, which is what happened here. I'm pretty sure this was already in the process of being taken out. We didn't remove a picnic table. They would get replaced over the years, right? And this one is in pretty rough shape, and so they were very grateful that they were able to just cut it in half and deliver us a half a picnic table. We put it up against the wall, and it saved a lot of space. Now, I don't know what happened to the rest of the picnic table when they cut this in half. My guess is they just disposed of it. And so when we went with a list of things, here's the stuff that we borrowed from you, come pick it up. This was not on the list to be picked up, partially because they would just, get rid of it. Also because, hey, this is kind of a cool thing, and so maybe we can reuse it. So stuff like the kiosk, stuff like this, it might be reused. This probably won't be reused for future exhibits. I would imagine this is not going to be here in 5-10 years. But we'll hold on to it for a few years because there are opportunities like the fair, for example, right? The Wisconsin Valley Fair, the exhibition building, we have a booth every year, and frequently when we take stuff down from an exhibit, we will reuse as much of it as we can that year or the next year, stuff like that. So chances are if you come visit our booth at the fair this year, you will see some park department stuff or park exhibit stuff, right? Including this half table, maybe. We'll see. But for now, we're holding on to it because, hey, there's that possibility. Same thing with the information kiosk. We put the effort into making it. We might as well see if we have another use for it. You never know. We do get funding. We get grants and we get, donors that make it possible for us to do a lot of the exhibits that we do. Some of them more than others. When we have the funding, we try to make the most of it to do cool stuff. And so, but we're not above holding on to things and repurposing them later because it makes our life a lot easier. And, why reinvent the wheel? So this stuff will get stored someplace. I'm not entirely sure if we have a plan solidified yet, but probably in the next week we will be moving it out of here into someplace else. Yeah. So the parks table, the parks department didn't want the table, but they did take all the other stuff. That's something we do, right? So when all the stuff that was on the table and around it, all of that got taken, sorted, put into categories of here's the stuff that we borrowed from the parks department or from, the Straub household or, whoever. Here's the stuff that is ours that we pulled out of collections or from the library, and we'll put that stuff back. We have a big checklist. When we start to create an exhibit, we go through and make sure that every single item that we use is on a list so that we don't lose track of where things went and who gets them, right? We don't want to get into a situation where we're pretty sure we don't have a parks table like this, picnic table, but some of the other stuff we could have, mistaken for something we already had. We have a lot of things. So we make sure that it's all super well documented. And when we are done with the exhibit, we sort things out, contact people to come pick their stuff up, and put all of our stuff back. And ideally, that'll be taken as soon as possible, taken care of, so that we can get to the next business of starting to pull stuff out for the new exhibit. Ideally, we have everything kind of front-loaded the process here. As we put things into the exhibit, we put them on a list, and we check things off to put them back into the proper place, whether that's here in the collection storage, shelves and cabinets and things, or whether it goes back to library archives or to the donor, right? Or the loaner, I guess, in this case. Sometimes, although we like to have everything front-loaded, sometimes there's a little bit of administrative stuff that has to happen as well. Things that never quite got processed. Sometimes, the perfect item is offered to us right before the exhibit opens, and so we have to be all right, we don't have time to fully process it, so we'll put a placeholder. Now we have to finish that. Or is the case with this stuff here, which is things that were loaned to us, but over the course of the exhibit, the loaners, the people who own the things said, actually you can have it. It's probably better, we don't need it back. If you want it, you can have it. And so, yeah, it's stuff that we don't have. It's things that we would want for our collection, which presumably if we put it in the exhibit, probably is something we'd want. But now we have to go through and process it. So we try to do that as quickly as possible after the exhibit comes down, so we don't have things kind of floating out there, for the future. If we can get it done now, and then we can kind of start the next process of the new exhibit creation clean without having to kind of finicky paperwork to kind of deal with after the fact. That's the stuff that we want you to see in the exhibit, right? We talked about the pictures, the text, the objects. Those are the things that when you're coming to an exhibit, your attention is drawn to, right? That's the cool stuff. It tells the story. There's also another category of things that we should talk about that we need to find a home for after the exhibit comes down, which is the stuff that makes that possible, right? The display cases, the plexicube pedestals, the mannequins and dress forms, all the little props that we use to make sure that the objects that you're seeing in the exhibit can be seen and be interesting to look at. So those sort of things end up here in the prep room, prop room. There's a bunch of names, right? Some people here have taken to call it the mannequin room for some reason. Can't imagine why. But this is a great space that we are fortunate enough to have here at the Woodson History Center. It's in the basement, so it's a little further away from the second floor exhibit space, but there's an elevator which makes it a little easier to bring things back and forth. But yeah, this is the room where we keep the props, the mannequins, the prep stuff. So half of the tables are missing here. Usually we have a large open space here if we need to do some preparation for an exhibit or a display or something like that, maybe long-term or short-term. It's a great place to have just room that we can lock out from the rest of the world and work on. So that's what we typically would have here. Props, right? This is a great place for props. Not only do we have all of the mannequins and the dress forms and some of the bigger stuff, the stanchions that we might need to put up to, direct traffic or, bases. We have some cubes back there. Not as much down here at the moment. But we also have, shelves full of all sorts of things, whether you need them, big or small, if you need to prop something up in a case or, little things to just, whatever we need. There's a variety of different sizes and forms. We have plexiglass, we have wood, we have metal, we have, cloth-covered stuff. Anything that we can reuse, it's nice to have options. And so we've accumulated quite a bit of stuff over the years that we can use for that, and this is a great place to put it. So when an exhibit comes down, we try to get all of that stuff, in addition to getting all of the artifacts put away and loans back to the loanees, the people who loaned them to us. We try to make sure that all of the stuff that we used in the exhibit gets put away so that we can find it again when we start up the next process of putting the new exhibit. Now, sometimes it takes longer to do certain things than others. It's pretty easy to put back, here are some blocks back on the shelf or some dress form back over here. We don't have as many of the display cases here, in part because those big display cases are kind of clunky to move. So we typically try to move them as infrequently as we can. So we have some still up in the exhibit space. So yeah, some of the cases are still up here. They probably will be for a bit, probably not long term, but at this point we don't exactly have an idea of what is going to be in the space. We have some ideas of what things are going to be in the new exhibit, but we don't know how best to display them. And so for the moment, we're going to keep these up in the second floor space and not put them back in storage. Now, if we decide, for example, there have been exhibits where the quilting exhibit from a few years ago, in which we didn't really need that much of this sort of thing. We just were showing quilts. They were hanging from, a mechanism that we created from the ceiling. We did use the text stands like those over there, which are a great staple to do. These are blank now. But, we can put text in there, and that kind of explains the quilt. But, you don't, for quilts or something like that, you probably don't need a lot of cases or cubes, in which case, these will go back into storage where they're out of the way. But for now, we're going to keep them up here because, for one, we may want to use them, and having a good sense of the scale is kind of helpful in the space. There's a more pragmatic reason, which is these things are a pain in the butt to try to transport. They're not horrible, but these aren't horrible. The big one definitely is. And so it kind of makes more sense to hold off on that until we know we're going to need it, especially if we're going to use them. We probably want to repaint them up here. So we will probably not keep them this park green color. It'll probably be more that red color that'll be more consistent with the rest of the exhibit. So again, the tech stands, we'll kind of see how well we need them. But if we're not going to use them, we will be taking them down into storage, as part of the larger thing. But for now, we're still kind of doing some last minute adjustments. That's kind of how this takedown happens. We still have some bits and bobs. We'll probably take the TV off the wall, again, repainting and repairing the walls, and then we'll get to work in earnest with the planning of the new exhibit. So there you go. That's the story behind how we take an exhibit down, and the sort of stuff that happens in between. This is not the same day as the rest of the video. I had shot an ending for this, but decided to reshoot it for a variety of reasons. It just wasn't up to scratch. It's a lot of work to take an exhibit down. And this is also great because you get to see some of the progress, right? This wall is not green anymore. It is this reddish color. We'll probably have another coat of paint that'll go over this before we're all said and done. And you can see the railing here is almost all gone, and taken down and put into storage. So the process continues, even though this is a few days after the rest of the video. We're not quite taking everything down. It is a long process to take down an exhibit. But it is a lot quicker than it is to put up an exhibit, that is for sure, which is what we're going to be pivoting towards now. So let's talk about that. What is the new exhibit going to be? So I'll give you a quick kind of roadmap, tentative plans for 2024. The goal is we'll have everything down here, and we'll start putting together the new exhibit, which is going to be the 1920s. That's both the theme and the title, 1920s. We might have a more formal subtitle. I don't think probably by the time that this video comes out, but we're still workshopping that. But the 1920s, there's certainly more than enough subject to go around with that. So that'll be coming up. Our goal here is to have that done late spring, early summer, probably by June. So at June, this space up here on the second floor will be given over to the 1920s, at which point we'll take a couple weeks off, and then we'll start taking down the exhibit on the first floor, Peek Inside, which was kind of a temporary exhibit to start with. And so we'll replace that with the second sort of half, if you will, of the exhibit, the 1920s exhibit, which is to say a specific story of women's fashion and how that changing roles of women and in society and certainly Marathon County reflected through particularly the fashion and the clothing. That was kind of the main goal for this exhibit in the first place. That was kind of, well, that was Linda Forbes's dream to this is one that she wanted to do, an exhibit. So we were starting to think about how that would come together, and we realized, okay, well, we're going to need sort of a big section to contextualize all of that, and that spun off into the second floor exhibit space. So the second half, which I think we've tentatively called Ain't She Sweet, that will be opening up probably October, November, December. Again, we'll let you know when we get closer when that will be coming up. We got to get this one up first. So that's the next goal. Is this in the 1920s? And that is going to be our focus in terms of building an exhibit for the next few weeks, months. Yeah, probably months. On that note, there is a possibility here. So we don't really have like a formal wish list of here are the things that we absolutely would like to see in the exhibit. We're kind of going through our collections and figuring out where things are going to fit in the first place. But we do have some stuff that we're like, this would be really cool to have. Some of it's a little bit, maybe not the most doable. It'd be very cool to get a biplane, an airplane in here. I don't know how we would fit it through the doors. That probably won't happen. Probably. But there are a couple things that here's an opportunity. If perhaps you have something in your, family collection that is something that you might be willing to borrow us for the sake, for the course of the exhibit. If it's 1920s, particularly in the stuff that we're really interested in right now, is sort of household items, decorative items specifically. Things that look very Art Deco, very 1920s in that regard. So household decorative items, that's kind of the big one. So, again, you don't, it's fine if you don't. If you just happen to, if you're someone who has a, perfect thing that you want to, potentially see if we want for the exhibit, please let us know. We would be interested at least to talk more. So, yeah. But as I said, it's a long process taking an exhibit down. Partially, it's made a little bit better by all the work that goes in at the beginning of the exhibit, which is what we're doing next. But that is really the story of what happens in between the exhibits. It's going to be a constant state of change in this space as we figure out what color things are going to be and whether we're going to need this wall or that case. And how things are going to fit into the exhibit and what stories we're going to tell. And so it's an exciting prospect. I'm looking forward to the process, and I'm looking forward to opening and allowing you to come and see the exhibit. And I'm sure we'll have more to say at some point when we do open it up. Maybe we'll do another History Chats talking about the process, actually building the exhibit. But for now, I think we'll call it there. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with some more History Chats next week. In February, we're going to be doing some, some places you should know across Marathon County. So come back for that next week and in the weeks to follow. In the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time for some more History Chats.